He was transported to the hospital. His gun was left in his vehicle. Police impounded the vehicle because it wasn't drivable, logged the gun in, and they would not give it back. And it took lots of threat. Why am I threatening police departments all over the state of Texas to get this done when you should just release guns? And it was the same thing. They were like, well, we don't know it's his. It was like, you
Emily
took it out
Taylor,
of his car.
gun threatener.
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we are talking about what happens if you are in an accident, you get rushed to the hospital, and you have your gun on you. We're going to talk to you about what happens in the states that absolutely prohibit you from carrying into a hospital. What does mens rea have to do with it? And finally, under all circumstances, how do you get that firearm back? But before we get started, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting the like button.
And this comes up, unfortunately, more frequently than you would think. Accidents and emergencies happen. We have a lot of everyday carriers out there. A lot of folks getting taken to the emergency room. And I can't tell you the number of people I've spoken to who, and maybe it's, and I'll do a little twist on this. We didn't intro this, but we have family members rushing to meet their family members at the hospital. We got a lot of different things going on where, hey, where's my gun right now isn't at top of mind when it comes to hospitals. And so I think it's worth talking about these situations because we see a kind of a silly amount of people getting arrested.
Yes. And so there are, I would say, about a quarter of all states absolutely prohibit carrying into a hospital, period. It's written in the statute. That's all you got to know. And then there are many, many more states and counties and cities and localities and specific hospitals who are going to prohibit you via signage anyway. So even though it's not written into your law necessarily, practically speaking, you are going to be in hot water for blowing apart your trespass rules because you went past signs. So this is something that affects lots and lots of people. And I think first we should talk about mens rea. Why does that matter?
Yeah, so when we think about a crime is just a bunch of components. We call them elements. And it's the government's job whenever they're trying to prove their case. When you see these big dramatic scenes in movies where the prosecutors point their finger at somebody, what they're trying to convince the jury about after having heard the evidence is that they've proven each and every single one of those components or elements beyond a reasonable doubt. And in every single crime we have in our common law system, there's always a mental component and a physical component. So taking a gun into a hospital, the act of actually it being transported into the hospital, that would be the physical act. When we talk about mens rea, we're talking about the mental or the culpability of that accompanies the physical action. So you see all different types of mental culpabilities, from criminal negligence to recklessly to knowingly to intentionally. And depending on, the reason we do that is we want to punish folks, theoretically, who act more intentionally when committing a crime than, hey, maybe this looks more like an accident, or maybe they didn't make a good choice, but they knew what was going on. And so, yeah, mens rea is a huge element to it because what if you're unconscious?
Right, exactly. So we have, anytime the government is proving a crime, you have to prove jurisdiction, basically. You've got to prove mens rea and you've got to prove actus reus, right? So if you are saying, let's assume this is Harris County, Texas, right? All right, so this potential offense happened in Harris County, Texas. Box checked, right? Hospital was in Harris County. And then you're going to say, and they were found in the hospital with a gun. Right?
Carrying a firearm.
Carrying a firearm into the hospital. Actus reus, check. However, there is always going to be something on our spectrum of mental states called mens rea that's going to be anywhere from they did it intentionally or knowingly, right? All the way down to, if you're going to be charged with a crime, criminal negligence, just straight up regular negligence, not enough to get you in prison, in jail, convicted of a criminal offense, because that's just an accident. Negligence, accident. You can solve negligence issues in the civil courts via tort law. We don't put people in cages for accidents without some greater mens rea. Criminal negligence is like extreme negligence, and most of the time we have something that's, I guess if you think about the maybe accidents that get people in trouble, it'd be a recklessness mental state, right? So you consciously disregard a substantial risk in what you did, that it was going to hurt someone, harm someone, et cetera, et cetera. And it actually did in fact happen. Think of driving drunk, you hit a pedestrian, you hurt or killed a pedestrian. Well, you definitely didn't contemplate, you didn't intentionally go run down that pedestrian, but when you got behind the wheel drunk, you should have known that there was a chance that was going to happen. You disregarded your substantial risk of harm. So, mental states. You, if you are unconscious, or, I mean, let's not even say totally unconscious, you are just
Yeah, you're on the gurney.
hurt, distressed on a gurney. You have no control over where you're going or what's happening. You are not intentionally or knowingly transporting that firearm in, correct?
Correct. And it's based on the idea of voluntariness. And so a part of, the acting part in your mental state is it's a knowing and voluntary act. So think about this. Somebody holds you at gunpoint and says, "Go rob that bank." Well, guess what? You're not doing this because you want to. It's because you're afraid this person might, delete you if you don't, if you don't follow their instructions. So it's not like you intended to rob the bank. It's based on this voluntariness. And so, yeah, there are these situations come up when people are in car accidents. They have head, neck, and back injuries. They're on a backboard. They're on the gurney. They still have their everyday carry on their side. Other folks are transporting them into the hospital. You're carrying, but are you knowingly and voluntarily, breaking the barrier of the hospital, carrying it inside the premises? No.
No. Now, are you going to get charged with a crime in a bad jurisdiction? Possibly.
Yeah, I've seen it happen a couple of times.
Possibly. And then you have to go and you got to fight it. And you got to fight that battle that I am fighting right now, Richard knows about, where you're desperately trying to convince the people who matter that a mental state isn't there. And it might happen slowly, it might happen quickly, it might happen because a jury ultimately sees to it, but it is a fight that you are going to have to have. Now, what if, however, this is kind of our different scenario. So back it up, accident has occurred, and you do have the wherewithal to say, hey, I have my firearm on me. What do we do? How does that normally get sorted?
So I've seen it play out in a couple of different scenarios. Family member accompanying you to the hospital, handing off the gun to them, alerting hospital staff before they take you into the hospital. I've seen that play out. Alerting them as soon as you get in there, because let's say you didn't take it in there knowingly and voluntarily, but you're restored to a point of consciousness to where you're alert, you're active. Well, at some point, maybe you cross that threshold into, okay, now you're just carrying a gun in a hospital, right? Again, and I don't think we've said this. Do you think hospitals should be off limits?
No.
No, I don't think so either. But so we got to
because why have more soft targets?
Right.
Why?
So, but we have clients who get this charge. So maybe at some point you regain the capacity to have a culpable mental state, alerting the hospital staff as soon as that happens. Now we see a lot of, let's say, people not charged, because I'd say I had quite a few people charged. Had a lot of guns just confiscated.
Yes. So that is generally what I see happen is let's say you are in the ambulance and you say to the paramedics, "Oh my gosh, I've got my firearm on me. What are we going to do?" The paramedics will take it. They will call the police. They will give it to the police to log into evidence. Or you're in your vehicle, or they find it on you or in your vehicle. Police actually go ahead and take direct possession. That happens more than anything, I would imagine. And at that point, you're going to have to hopefully not have a big battle to get it back. You get out of the hospital, you recover, you go to the police department, you give them your credentials, and you say, "This was logged into evidence with your property room. I'm out of the hospital now. Please release it from evidence and property. There's no crime, right? I just need it back." And hopefully it is happily released. However, oftentimes it's not. In fact, it was one of those. How many firearms have I gotten back for people in the last 3 months that I cannot remember what police department it was, but it was one of those rinky-dink ones up by Dallas.
Sure.
You're from up there.
Yeah,
it was a rinky-dink, and it was that exact situation. The guy got in an accident.
Grand Prairie.
No, in fact, it was not Grand Prairie.
I don't know what's going on in Grand Prairie, but you guys get it together.
I know, right? Guy got in a car accident. It was a single car accident. He was transported to the hospital. His gun was left in his vehicle. Police impounded the vehicle because it wasn't drivable, logged the gun in, and they would not give it back. And it took lots of threat. Why am I threatening police departments all over the state of Texas to get this done when you should just release guns? And it was the same thing. They were like, "Well, we don't know it's his. was like, you
Emily
took it out
Taylor,
of his car.
gun threatener.
I am a gun threatener.
That's another good movie sequel, Gun Threatener.
Gun threatener.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Anyway, so yes, so hopefully you get it back easily, but if not, I don't know, if you live in Texas, call me.
Yeah, and then here's probably the last kind of sneaky lever the police kind of pull on this. And this happens with all gun crimes. So this is applicable to a lot of different scenarios. All right, let's say they've used their better judgment, not charged you, gun is being held. Well, we're within this statute of limitations. And this is kind of a lawyer tightrope I walk a lot of, hey, do we wake up the sleeping dog and try to get the gun back? That increases the likelihood of getting charged with a crime erroneously just because the cops want to be jerks and not return firearms. Do we write out the statute of limitations? Have you walked the tightrope?
Oh gosh, all the time. And people get so upset when you're like, really think you should let this one go for a while. And they're like, I didn't do anything wrong. That's my gun. It's like, I know, I get it. You know how many clients I have who didn't do anything wrong? I mean, maybe they put themselves in a situation where it's like, come on, don't do that. But who legally didn't do anything wrong? A lot. Lots of them.
I had a San Antonio guy, murder investigation had been pending for like 3 weeks. And after advising him of all the pros and cons to fighting to get his gun back, he really wanted to go down that road.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you got to be aware of. It's not because your lawyer doesn't want you to exercise your Second Amendment rights, but statute of limitations, they have this gigantic window where the state can charge you with a crime.
Yeah, years.
And I mean, as far as kicking the can, not giving guns back, that lever exists out there, and the government pulling it kind of happens a lot whenever you bring attention to it.
Yes, unfortunately. However, I mean, if you are the victim of pure accident and happenstance, you shouldn't have to worry about that one. If you got in a car accident and rushed out because you were definitely like DWI and then they're not doing anything about it and they lost your blood test and, maybe don't get your gun back into that scenario until the statute of limitations runs. But, use your best judgment.
But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And as always, question and comment for us below. Until next time, we're the Armstrongs.